Hey everybody, Mark Burgess here, Big East Bass Fishing. How's everybody doing? I hope you're doing great today. So this video is a follow-up video from the last one on the final day of the Bassmasters Classic, or the final recap of the Bassmasters Classic. I did, if you haven't checked it out, posted it Tuesday. So this is from one of my subscribers, one of my followers, had a question on the baits that were used from the top competitors, the guys that did well in the tournament. Okay, so I'll put together generally from my memory what was used to do well in the Classic, what baits were used to do well. Not really emphasizing on the exact baits or even colors, a few of them, but for the most part just a generalization. Okay, so time frame, of course, pre-spawn, spawn in East Texas, north of Dallas, on Lake Ray Roberts. Fish were migrating in from the main lake looking to spawn. A few of them were spawning, but not the big waves that typically happen. I have personally seen that happen on Lake Fork, where you'll fish for like a week, it'll be tough as nails, and then literally overnight they're everywhere. You can walk on them. Okay, so that could have happened like within a day or two of the tournament. Could be going on right now, could be this weekend, I don't know, but it's going to be soon. So the fish move in from the main lake, and they were hanging up on those trees, those cedar trees that are out that you saw if you watched the Classic, prior to going to the bank and spawning. Okay, so the baits that were used primarily were fishing around those trees and around some shallow grass, most likely hydrilla on that lake right there. I'm not positive, but some shallow grass. It wasn't emergent, it was submergent in relatively shallow water. Okay, so you saw guys like John Cox, for example, throwing like a shallow crankbait. Most likely, he was thrown because he's sponsored by Berkeley. This is a Berkeley Fritz side, kind of a cross between it's a flat-sided bait and a square bill, kind of a cross between the two in that color, that red craw color. John was also throwing a chatterbait some, which, Lee Livesey was also throwing a chatterbait. A lot of guys were throwing chatterbait. And again, this is a generalization. This is just a 3/8 ounce, shad-colored chatterbait, okay, or the version from their sponsors. So you saw a lot of guys covering water with that. I mean, to go a little bit further with the chatterbait, you saw Lee Livesey, if you did see the tournament. If not, he was throwing a pink chatterbait, which pink, yellow, orange in the spawn, around the spawn, pre-spawn, has always been a big deal, for years, especially a long time ago. Bubblegum, colors like that. But he did quite well on that pink chatterbait. You saw Hunter Shryock fishing those trees. He was fishing with a tube. Again, a fish, tube was a big deal years ago. A lot of people got away from it. So fish have short-term memories. So he's pitching a tube around those trees, and depending on where they were in the trees, where Hunter thought they were, determined the amount of weight that he's using on the Texas rig tube. If he thought they were down near the bottom and he had to get, it was a deeper, say 8, 10, 12 foot, had to get through the trees, he might have been doing, quarter, 3/8, half ounce weight to get down through the trees to the bottom. If he thought that they were higher up, which I don't know if he did, because that's something that the winner, Easton, figured out, that where they were higher up in the water column, in the branches of those trees, you could rig it with a lighter weight, so it would take longer to go through the strike zone, getting more bites. You saw a lot of guys throwing a jig, pretty standard fare, year round. Never mind this time of year, especially because you could catch them on a jig in those trees. You could catch them swimming a jig in that grass. You could catch them on a jig pitching to if you did see any beds in the area, you could catch them on a jig. If you saw any cruising fish or pitching up in front of them, wait till they get close and twitch it. So a jig, pretty standard fare, and most all the guys had a jig of their choice, color, weight, size, trailer, tied on for that particular tournament. A lot of the guys using front-facing sonar, which a lot of them were, not guys like Greg Hackney or John Cox. They weren't using front-facing sonar, but the guys that were, you saw them throwing a jerkbait. And again, this is just a jerkbait, Lucky Craft jerkbait. But every manufacturer makes them, and you're throwing pretty much that brand if you're sponsored by them, or if you're not, you're whatever brand that you like and the color that you like. A jerk bait is just a real easy bait if you're using front-facing sonar to keep in front of the fish, over and above and in front of the fish, to basically keep it in the strike zone for a longer period of time. So you saw a lot of the guys throwing a jerk bait. Finally, the last bait, which was it's the classic winning bait. He was throwing a Strike King trick worm, if you will, in June bug, red bug, June bug color. I know the worm was Strike King, whatever they call it. This happens to be a Zoom trick worm in that exact same color, June bug or red bug, with a nose weight and a Nico style hook. I just have it on this little collar. That's how I like to fish it. And what Easton figured out was, Easton Fothergill figured out that the fish were higher up in the water column, higher up in the branches of those trees. They were not down by the base. Okay, so he went from like a 3/32 to a 1/32 ounce weight in the head, rigged on a spinning rod, with fluorocarbon leader, braid to fluorocarbon leader. It would allow this bait, the lighter weight would allow this bait to have a slower presentation, a slower fall through those branches, giving the fish more time to react to it. Okay, so he figured that out, and it is probably the main reason he won the Bassmasters Classic. Okay, so that's the baits in a nutshell and generalization that were used to win Bassmasters Classic. These baits will also play anywhere else in the country, all over the country. Right now I'm throwing a jerkbait a lot. I'm throwing a jig a lot. I'm throwing a chatterbait quite a bit. Not throwing the tube. It's kind of fallen out of favor, although I'm not opposed to it. I just have to basically work out the rigging and the hook and get comfortable with that. But crankbait, shallow diving crankbait, shallow to medium diving crankbait in a flat side version. I am throwing quite a bit, and now that I've gotten away from this a little bit, I may end up bringing it back into the rotation and see what we can do with that. So that's it. That came from a question from one of my subscribers. Please keep the questions coming. I really, really appreciate it. And again, I know I mentioned it before, but do me a favor and just hit that subscribe button. And then if you want, the notification button as well. So that way every time I post a new video, you'll be notified and you can watch it. Of course, it's all free. And again, I really, really, really appreciate the support. And we'll see you on the next one.